All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the All Systems Go podcast, where we invite startup founders and digital marketers to discuss strategies and software used to build automated marketing and sales systems that scale. I'm your host, Chris L. Davis, the founder of Automation Bridge. And on this episode, I have Naira Perez of the Portland Trailblazers. She has over 2 decades of marketing experience, and she got her start in direct response advertising, building brands on TV before that was even a thing. Just a quick note here: my kids still don't know what a commercial is. They call everything an ad because they grew up on YouTube and non-TV. So it just takes me back to just how long you've been doing advertising. In the past, she has founded Spring Hill Digital to help start up small business and medium businesses to develop digital marketing strategies, identify customer patterns, and optimize return on investment in paid advertising. If you need a follower base, if you wanted to increase your brand awareness, need more leads, want to advertise more on Instacart, feature more products. All of it can be done. She's done it through paid advertising. In the past, it's landed her in a very unique position now. Naira, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm doing just fine.
Yes, yes. And I'm glad to have you on so we can discuss advertising on a shoestring budget and when to determine when to start putting money into it, what to expect. But before we jump into today's topic, give us a little bit about your background. You're probably the most unique right now in terms of what you were doing, being so similar to a lot of our listeners and audience, to something totally different than what anybody in in our audience has probably done, and that's achieve marketing at a high level for a major NBA team.
Yes, I'm going against the current. A lot of people are leaving their organization or corporate jobs to go and freelance and do their own thing. And I'm actually just turning the corner and doing the opposite.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I have worked in advertising agencies for a long time. That's what I had done all the way up to entering the Portland Trailblazers. The thing is, I did advertising for TV, I did advertising radio, everything that was direct to consumer. Then I went into digital advertising and I stayed with agencies, but I saw a need for startups to get the same kind of advice and experience than big companies with big budgets were getting.
Mm,
So I went more out of love for the small entrepreneur than anything. I went out and started my own business, which was Spring Hill Digital. And I built a team, and that's what we did for 5 years. We helped a lot of brands start up their journey, start up their way to profitability. They normally start as, it's me, my credit card, and a lot of dreams, and we got them to be a real company.
yeah.
We also help small to medium companies that had no paid media department. There is a lot of marketing specialists, there is wonderful people in this industry, but it's very difficult to start from zero a paid media department. So we will fill in that void and get companies that were really fun companies. I had an ice cream
Mm,
company. How cool is that? Um, and help them with that part of their marketing and get them into digital and get them into seeing what pay media is all about. So last year, I decided to change course a little bit and concentrate on helping somebody that already has a department, somebody that is innovative, to you know be even more innovative, have a strategy, and just change a little bit of what I was doing. I have to say that the Portland Trail Blazers is, from all the companies I have seen in my career, it's a very innovative team. They are not afraid of trying new things. They're not afraid of pushing the boundaries. And to be honest with you, that's what attracted me to this position,
Mm.
this opportunity. Somebody doing that in digital marketing, that is just pure fun. And there is nothing more rewarding than having fun at work. So that's why I turned around and did the opposite. Everybody's going left, and I'm like, whoops, I'm going right.
Which is admirable. And I think that when you look at just how much you've accomplished thus far, if anybody's earned it, you have, right? If
Well,
anybody said,
thank you. That feels good. That feels good.
yeah,
Yeah.
and good on you, because there is a lot of the norm is to go against it, and by some means you look weaker or cheaper if you're not out here gritting like the entrepreneur. And I've never subscribed to it. There was a time where I was drinking that juice, but I spit it out. I don't carry it in my house anymore, because
Hmm.
there are many ways to success, many
Yeah,
paths to success, and I think that's the best segue into the many paths to success with paid advertising. And
exactly.
I'll say this. I've done it wrong. I've done it wrong more than once, and I've witnessed it go wrong more than I've seen it go right.
Hmm.
And I don't believe it's because advertisers are ignorant or people have the wrong expectations. I feel like it's very finding an advertising strategy and somebody to do that for your business is very much like finding a mate,
Hmm.
or a good friend. There's got to be so much alignment between the two because they're so synchronous between the marketing, the sales, and the advertising, that if somebody just comes in and say, "Hey, we advertise this way," and it doesn't fit that business model, both could be right and get a wrong output.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I've seen many people waste money. I've seen many people approach it with the wrong perspective. So I wanted to give you the floor and just walk through, how should somebody be thinking. First off, how do I self-assess? Am I ready for paid advertising?
Yeah. That's actually a very good question. No matter what the size of your organization, um, you need to think about what do you have in house. What is it that I
Mm,
have in house that I am doing that I can maintain and I can scale? So, for example, whenever you're putting money in your marketing, in your advertising, you're going to bring new audiences. You're going to bring
mm,
leads. You're going to bring new customers. Can you handle that? And everybody will say yes, because more sales means more money. But it also means more volume of a lot of things, more volume of complaints, more volume
yep,
of engagement, more
yep.
volume of leads that need to be tracked. So know that it doesn't only bring additional sales, it brings a lot of other things that we need to think about. So let's figure out if you can handle that. If you have the systems to support the additional volume, then yes, let's start investing. Because if there's, and I'm going to tell you this, the most frustrating part of being an advertising agency was bringing leads to a customer that did nothing with them, or that
Mm,
let them get lost in their system, or didn't take advantage of the leads by nurturing them. If they didn't convert into a sale, then they were discarded. That's not how you have to approach paid. You have to approach paid as, one, we're going to learn because we're going to get new people that have never heard of us, and two, we need to take care of whoever is coming. We're going to get new feedback that we have never gotten before, and we're going to have to accept it. And you
mhm.
know what? Sometimes we may fail and we may have to change course. So once you have accepted all of those things, let's go ahead and invest the money in your advertising. But for to minimize risk, let's make sure that we track the process. And this is number one thing about paid media: track as much as possible,
Mm.
because otherwise you may be losing money and you don't know where.
Yes, yes. So my first experience with a paid advertiser, his name was Andrew Scher at Lead Pages. And we had such a great relationship because I built the system
Hmm.
and I built it to scale. And he was, as an advertiser, he's like, wait a minute, we can keep pouring leads into this thing. Like he wasn't used to that. It was like
Hmm.
at some point we got to turn the faucet off. But
Yeah.
you mean to tell me you have a system that it keep them flowing through, and it became this really fun back and forth where it's like, hey, wait a minute, these leads are coming through. I need to add more to the system. And then expand the system. And he's like, oh wait, we can increase the budget. So that was my first time experiencing paid advertising like that. And that was probably the apex because after that, I've seen companies of all sizes struggle. These are
Hmm.
not just the starters. These are companies who have millions. And the only difference that I see a lot of times is that they can lose 1 million on
Hmm.
advertising and still remain a profitable company.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't lose 20,000, ten
No.
thousand, 50,000 on advertising. So the first check is, do you have the systems in place? Which you're listening to the All Systems Go podcast. So this is what we do. And now you're just seeing the added benefit of that. Once I have the systems in place and I've said, okay, I've got systems in place, my lead generation just doesn't seem to be working. I feel like my product could sell more. I start eyeing paid advertising. Is there anything I should be looking at first? I've got systems, I've got some customers. Should I maximize organic first? Like what is the logical next step
Hmm.
before going into paid media for success?
If you have organic, which I hope you do, but if you have organic, look at your organic. Look at the content that is performing well. Look at the content that actually represents you the best and that your audience really enjoys consuming,
Mhm.
because that's the content that we're going to start with in paid media. Paid media is no longer sitting in front of the TV and some brand feeds you whatever advertising they want and yay. No, paid media has become part of the conversation, part of establishing a relationship with new people. So this is important to understand, because if you give them content that was not thought out very well, or if you give them content that doesn't resonate with them, then you're going to lose money. And it's all about efficiency, it's all about return on investment. So let's make sure that the content is valuable. You're giving them something before asking them for anything. And yes,
Mhm.
that can be done in paid media, that can be done in advertising. And then another thing to remember is sometimes this will be the first and only time that a possible customer, a member of your audience, will give you the time of day. If
Mm.
you fail at it, you may not have another opportunity. They may disregard your message for the future. So just really pay attention to that content. That's another mistake that I saw a lot of, especially little startups that don't have big creative budgets or something like that. Um, they will put out there something, whatever. Let's see how it does.
Yeah.
That's the wrong thing. No, I understand you don't have budget. Let's go to your organic. Let's see what kind of content is working, and let's borrow it from it.
Yeah.
So, or copy it, or get inspiration from it. If you don't have enough budget to create something new and exciting, so that is something like that. First step needs to be thought out.
Yeah. I liken it often to listening. And
Hmm.
a lot of times people are really good talkers. I can create content. I can put videos on social media. I can push, push, push. But when it comes time to listen, 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 what are people saying? And I'm not talking about just in the comments. I'm
Hmm.
talking about looking at your analytics. What
Hmm.
pages are they visiting? Looking at your email open rates, which emails are they opening the most? So you have some idea of what your audience is looking for from you and getting value from you. So you're not starting
Exactly.
with this blank slate. The last thing any experienced advertiser wants to hear is, "Hey, let's just go try some stuff."
Yeah.
Now, granted, if they've got thousands and thousands of dollars a day to say, "Hey, look, I've got this budget, I've got to burn it," I'm sure a savvy advertiser will find somewhere to start. But I bet that conversation is going to always start with, "Hey, so what do we know already?
Yeah.
What and who do you have access to? Or who can we quickly get access to just to get some preliminary data, get a feeler for, so I have this a better idea. What other companies are in
Hmm.
your industry? There's some kind of data that needs to
Yeah.
be provided,
Oh, there is
you
so
know?
much data out there. Let's say, as an example, the most difficult scenario is somebody that comes in the market and they're starting from absolutely zero,
Yeah,
right? A perfect example is a startup. They're just starting from zero. They created a product or a service that they feel is going to succeed, or they feel that the market needs. So, as you mentioned, we go in and we looked at, okay, what are other people doing? One, just in general, what are your competitors? Because every company has a competitor.
yeah,
What are your competitors doing? And also, if they are not using your product right now or your service, what are they doing to solve their problem? Because we go back to, every person has a problem that needs a solution.
yeah,
And then the steps are to find out, are they aware that there is a problem, that that problem can have a solution? If they know that that problem has a solution, how do we motivate them to search for the solution? And the third step will be, how do we take them from actively looking for the solution, to considering our brand for that solution? How do we,
yeah,
you know, enlighten them to our presence, and that we can be a solution for them? So
yeah.
those are the steps. Even if you start from zero, those steps can always be developed. Whenever I had the ice cream company as a client, I was not in charge of their organic, but I followed in Instagram so many ice cream companies. Like, my Instagram was filled with ice cream. But
Mhm.
then on top of that, if you're not eating ice cream for dessert, what are you eating? I had candy in there. I had everything that you can imagine. They had products that were vegetarian, so I followed every vegetarian influencer out there. How are they presenting the food? How are they talking about the properties of being vegetarian? So all of those things give you an idea of the last thing, which is trends. So you had your competitors, you had people, solving their problem with other brands, other products. The third one is trends, because it's the message that audiences are actually uh, digesting.
Yeah,
That's how they're digesting information. So that's where TikTok is a trendsetter, right? Challenges and dances and anything that you can see, how are people digesting the information that they're receiving? Because there's so much information, you're drowning in information every day. So you're going to pick the most delicious one. So how can I make my information be delicious enough for audiences to digest it?
yeah, yeah. Okay. No, this is really good. We've got our systems in place that allows us to go look at our data and analytics to
Hmm.
have a good starting point. Now I've got my wallet out. I'm opening it up. Is not as much in there as I would like for it to be, but I want to get started. So how do I
Hmm.
take this shoestring budget of mine and get some fuel, get some leads coming in? What do I expect? Is there a certain amount of spend per day? Is there a certain amount of leads? Like, what does that shoestring budget look like?
A shoestring budget looks different for different companies, obviously, but we've done as little as $5 a day, which is
Mm,
digestible for somebody that's putting it in their credit card. So it depends on where your audience is. That's why all this homework that seem tedious, looking at the audience, looking at the content, looking at all of these things, you need to find out where your audience is, and then that will determine the channels. That's the first step.
mm,
Let's see, where are they? I'm going to tell you that ranking from more expensive to less expensive, LinkedIn is probably one of the most expensive channels that you can go into.
Mm.
Their audience is very specific. You can target them in certain ways. And so your cost per click, if a cost per click in LinkedIn, let's say, is $15, in comparison, a Facebook click is $1.5, for the same sort of product. So you need to think really careful about how many clicks do you need? How much volume do you need?
Yeah.
And if LinkedIn is the place to be because your audience it's only on LinkedIn, then let's plan for it. But that's a different planning than if you go to TikTok, where your CPMs, your cost per thousand, your cost of advertising is really, really inexpensive. But
Mm.
that's not a place for a software that, for billing in dentist offices or something like that. That may not be the place. That's not where you're going to find your audience.
Mm.
So the first thing is, where is my audience? Then that will determine the channels, that will determine the content, that will determine the message. Um, is there a normal monthly budget? I would say at least, just even considering the cheapest channel, let's say you're considering like a TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, at least you should do 500 to 1,000, which seems like a lot.
Mhm.
But remember, that's going to bring you new volume. That's going to bring you feedback. That's going to bring you a lot of learnings. Can you do it for less? Absolutely. But then you have to wait longer,
Yeah.
because you're not going to get that volume. Then, you know, a higher budget will get you. So sometimes we want to fail fast, learn, regroup, and then try it again.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just have to go slow and be patient. And maybe it is whenever you're testing those systems that you have set up, you think you have it all right. It's like, okay, let's test them and start trickling in leads, trickling in sales, and see if everything works. And then you scale up.
Yep.
And sometimes you're like, let's flood it, let's see what happens. And then just turn it off and evaluate. So
Yeah.
it depends a lot, which is the most popular marketer answer ever. It
Yep.
depends.
There's so
Um,
many considerations, right?
yes, yes, there
And
is so many things to consider.
and I think that when you talk about failing fast, you also have to understand that you may have to tweak the system.
Absolutely.
The same system used for organic or the same system used for strategic partnerships may not work as well for paid advertising. That doesn't mean that for whatever reason your product is no longer a fit. It's just the intent, because every audience or every channel that you use to reach your audience, it has different intent. If I'm advertising on YouTube, well, my intent is different. I'm searching for something on YouTube, whereas
Mm-hmm.
on Facebook, I'm not searching for anything. I,
Mm-mm.
there are times where I'll go to Facebook just to literally look at ads, but I think I'm a rarity in that. Nobody goes on Facebook to look at ads. So it's more disruptive than anything. So you have to take that into account. And then in terms of return, should people be expecting, hey, I listened to the podcast with Naira. I got everything in place. I'm doing $1,000 a month. Where's the money? Where's the return? What would you say? Again, it all depends, and there it's I know it's industry specific, but if you could ballpark a duration of time before you can really start to anticipate consistent returns, is that more of a 30, 90, 6 month type duration, so that hey, at least have this much to
Mm-hmm.
withstand the first month or two, or what? How does that look?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. So before I answer it, I'm going to tell you that your portfolio in advertising, if you're doing $1,000, can be divided by intent, like you were saying. Have something that will take the low hanging fruit. That will
Mm.
be high conversion, which could be search, or could be YouTube, or it could be Pinterest. Pinterest is
Mm.
basically a search engine for different topics. Um, uh, and so do some in high conversion, high intent, and then do some in branding. That's your Facebook, your Instagram, your TikTok, even your LinkedIn. Those are branding. Those are what you were saying. People are not thinking about their problem right now that they need to be solved. They just want to catch up with friends and family and influencers,
Yep.
but they're not actively seeking a solution. If you diversify, then you'll start finding out where your audience is, and if it's more profitable to just go with high conversion and concentrate on those searches, or if actually branding is bringing you leads that then you can nurture for the future, you can like evolve, educate.
Yeah.
So if you can diversify your portfolio when planning your paid media, even better. Now, return on investment, it's going to depend on that diversification. It's going to
Mm,
depend on if you go all in into branding, it's probably going to take anywhere from 3 to 6 months to get any returns.
yeah.
If you're going to for high intent and high conversion, the searches, Google search, Microsoft search, it was called Bing before, Yahoo, all these search engines, then that could be shorter, and you could have high returns in like 1 2 months,
Yeah.
just as soon as you get your keyword optimized, keywords list optimized, your ad copy or fix, all of that, then you could start getting return on investment right away. But I would discourage you from going only to one or another. I think brands tend to concentrate on short-term gains,
Mm,
and they kind of forget that there is a long-term plan that they need to do as well. I had a client at one time. They were a software for offices, and they were advertising on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn was giving them a lot of leads, but they weren't converting right away. This was a very expensive software,
mm,
and in their mind, they thought that it would take 6 months to convert a lead to a sale, but it didn't. So they got a lot of leads that weren't converting, but search was doing great. So they just transfer all their budget to search. So come to realize that the life of a lead was actually 2 years. So 2 years
mm.
after we gave them leads in LinkedIn, those leads started converting,
Yeah,
and it
wow.
started making LinkedIn an amazing source of leads, an amazing source of sales. And those sales were so much more qualified. They were getting higher price um, products from them, like the top end.
Mhm.
Instead of search was giving them returns right away, but it was the cheaper product, the more inexpensive.
Yeah.
So think about this whenever you're actually planning. Do you know how much it takes to convert a lead? Do you know the quality of the lead? And that will let you know when you're going to start seeing profitability. This client in particular is the extreme. They saw profitability from LinkedIn 2 years after the fact. But what happened once they converted all the leads, then they had to restart the process all over again because they gave up on
Yep.
LinkedIn.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's safe to say it is one of those long-term strategies you commit to, just like SEO, just
Hmm.
like anything you do in business, right? You don't do it for one time, it works, and then you're like, okay, I'm done. You keep working it. And with paid advertising, what I've learned is that um data dominates.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you have the data and you have the team or the people to help you understand what that data is saying, that's going to put you in a much better position to capitalize going forward. I want to do some rapid questions for you, troubleshooting, and I
Okay.
know you've probably seen these trends time and time again. So I'm not looking for the right answer. I'm just looking for what you've seen in your experience.
Okay.
Profound experience you have. So what happens when you have? What would you recommend to a company who's been selling organically, let's say via Facebook Messenger, one-on-one communication, very well.
Hmm.
And they start to take that messaging and they say, hey, these are my people. They start pouring into advertising, we'll say on Facebook because that's where they're at, and they're getting low click throughs. and they
Mm-hmm.
come to you and say, "Wait a minute, I convert more when I direct message people. I'm
Mm-hmm.
giving you $1,000. What's going on?
Yeah.
What is your response there?"
So it's two parts. One, you
Yep.
can advertise on Messenger if you want to continue that type of communication.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can actually do paid media through Messenger and get new audiences.
Okay.
But two is, think about the relationship that you're talking about. Messenger or any kind of one-on-one communication is a very private, very intimate messaging. You cannot take that and make it public. You cannot just you those people know you. Those people somehow got to know you, lifted their hand, they say, I want to know more, and then they started a conversation, they started a relationship. But you cannot take what you learned from 20 years of marriage and apply it to dating again, because let's
Mm,
doesn't work.
yeah,
So
times have changed.
just think about this. Plus, a lot of people that may not be your audience are receiving that message. So one, target your audience mm, more accurately, and that could be a problem. And two, change the messaging, because it's not the same.
Mhm.
What you say in public is not the same as what you say in the intimate, with friends and family in a glass of wine.
Yeah, and I'll say it goes both ways. Know
Hmm.
when to stop speaking publicly and start
Hmm.
speaking privately.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
The public
Exactly.
communication may get their attention, but once you have it and then you've got their information, that's now a private communication. Don't keep speaking to them broadly and saying, "Hey, if you, hey there. Hey, friend,"
Yes,
start to
exactly.
talk to them in intimate. All right, great. Love that answer. All right, next up, I've got a local service-based business, and
Hmm.
everybody has told me local Google search is the way. Here's
Hmm.
the problem. I'm not just local. I take clients from all over, and I feel like I've exhausted all of
Hmm.
the local businesses, and I want to tap into a bigger market and expand. I know what works locally. How do I take that into an advertising means, and what channels should I look at?
Yeah. Well, the channels again depends on your audience. We talked
Mhm.
about it, right? Where is your audience? What kind of messaging? I would say it's kind of a reverse thought here.
Yeah.
Bear with me. So you know what works local because you're in the community. You know the specifics of your community, what's quirky about them that they're proud of, what they cannot stand, blah blah blah. So you know those things that make you target them so well.
Yep.
Now to go national or international, you have to take those things out. Those things that make you special for a local audience may actually not work in a broader. Again, is
Mm,
that messaging, is that the conversation that you're having with your friends or your neighbors is not the same that is going to work for somebody living, you know, 1,000 miles away.
yeah.
So you actually subtract that a little bit without losing your identity, obviously, but you subtract what makes you so attractive to the local market, and then go with a more general messaging, and then start adding layers a little bit back up to see where the tolerance for that very specific persona that you have built, where the tolerance is. And this
Mm,
is more, again, more about the messaging, but also about the audience. You
yeah.
will start with the audience that is more similar to your local audience, and then start adding a little bit more as well of generality. So as an example, in Facebook, you can create a lookalike, meaning you upload a list of emails or phone numbers or something that is particular to you, that you own, always that you own that list. You give it to Facebook. Facebook creates a persona, and then it says, okay, this persona, now I start looking for people that look like this persona.
Mm,
You can go look alike 1%. I think the minimum is 1% or 2% of the US, so it's like about 2 million. Or you can start going 5%, which every time that you increase that audience, you get a little bit farther away from the persona. Or you can go 10%. So you can start getting away from that persona and see how your messaging is coming through. So
Love it.
it's a two part. It's your messaging and it's your audience.
Yep. Know what to say and who to say it to. And the
Exactly.
third would be how to say it. Because sometimes you're not going to get 30 seconds. You're not going to get
No,
3 minutes. You may just get 5 seconds, 3 seconds. How can you say it? How can you
yeah,
make that headline pop to where they're
exactly.
scrolling in there? Oh, hey, that disrupted me. So, all right, two more. One is, what advice do you have for the company that says, Naira, I listen, I so believe you, but I believed the previous advertiser. And
Mhm.
I gave them $30,000 and I've got 5 leads to show for it, of which none converted. I want to believe pay advertising works, but I
Mhm.
just don't have the history with it. What would you say to that company that's been burned for whatever reason? Could be their own
Yeah.
fault, could be the fault of others. How should they re-engage with this paid advertising in the sense of, is any of that data that they collected of any use to the
Mhm.
paid advertiser going forward?
I always love seeing data, no matter if the data was a failure or not. I
Mm,
always learn something. And I cannot tell you how many clients I got at Spring Hill Digital that came to me because they had been burned by a previous advertising. And
mhm.
so referral said, okay, she's different. You can trust her, full transparency. Um, a lot of people come with a burn advertising paid media experience.
Yeah,
I love my industry, but there are people out there that follow their own thoughts, and maybe those thoughts don't work for everybody.
yeah,
So what would I say is, like, let's look at the data, let's see what we can learn from all those $30,000 that you pour in. They generated something, so let's see what we learn. Let's see where we can take these crumbling pie and make it into something else.
yeah,
So we start there. And once they see that there's something to be learned, once that you take the pain out of having spent so much money and have nothing to show for, once you show them what they got, which sometimes is really good learnings, and that it can be applied to improve the next step, then then is when you start making headway. Like, they got something. They're not,
mm,
they have not, that wall that they put up and it's like no more paid media ever again, it starts coming down. It's like, well maybe. But also, like, the worst case scenario that I've gotten many times is whenever the previous advertiser actually didn't give them any data
mm.
because the previous advertiser owned their account, or
Ouch.
things like these. Those are really painful. Those are actually even more difficult because
Mm,
there's nothing to show for,
nothing.
right? There is nothing I can take and say, let's learn from it, because there's nothing to learn from. So I have to go back and just kind of look for those nuggets of information in conversations that they had before, or in their own company, or in their own Google Analytics. Normally, they do own their own Google Analytics.
Yeah,
So I have to look for that information a little bit harder. But there is always something to be learned, even if it fail. Sometimes you have to fail to learn.
yeah,
So, and then we start little by little. We start with pilot programs. We start with tests. We do several variations, and then we start learning again, but at a much lower risk.
mm,
And what really seals it for people that have been there before is being completely honest and transparent about why are we doing these things. If they fail, this is what we're going to learn. If they succeed, this is how we're going to scale it up. And just full transparency.
yeah, yeah. All right, last one. I'd imagine when you had the ice cream, the ice cream business, and you were running the advertising for them, there was a different challenge and also a different approach because it was so niche, right?
Hmm.
There's not a whole
Hmm.
lot of competition out there. What about markets like myself, where it's marketers marketing to marketers, where
Hmm.
people know the tricks and the tactics? Um, in your experience, have you seen that you have to get more creative, or is it just really staying true to diving deep into the data and understanding how to communicate to them? Or do I need to? I see all kinds of ads. I see
Mhm.
people shouting in your timeline. I see them doing some real creative, like, gifts, all kind of imagery.
Mhm.
What have you seen in these really competitive markets? Is it still clarity over creativity? Are there things that you can do to stand out, or is it just kind of like you're just gonna have to pay more to play in those types of industries?
It's not that you have to pay more to play exclusively. I mean, more competition always means higher cost of being there. Just
Hmm.
supply and demand. Um, it is about talking about the topics that you are an expert at, talking about the topics that you like talking about, and that you can do in a consistent manner, because the
Hmm.
hyper creativity comes and goes. Those people that will jump on a very fast trend and then that trend dies, even though I told you to look at trends. But
Hmm.
if you cannot do this consistently, then you have a one hit wonder and that's it.
Yeah.
So, and follow through. That's where a lot of and people in your industry fall is, yes, it's great at the very beginning, and then there is no follow through. Then there is no systems to take you all the way home. There is just a break into communication, or you find different landing pages with different offers, and then you start mistrusting this relationship. I was like,
Hmm.
wait a minute. Today you told me it was 20% off, but tomorrow you tell me it's 60% off, and
Yeah.
then you go back to 5%. So I say in these industries that are very competitive, where people want to stand out really fast, really quick, it is more about the long journey, the consistent journey, and the expert advice and expert voice. And
Yeah.
I just, if I had to choose one word, it will be consistency.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was Dr. King that said consistency has its way, or has its place, has its place,
Hmm.
and it's hard to be consistent. And in competitive markets, I wholeheartedly agree. Just being consistent is a differentiator, because
Yeah.
people come and go, because everybody's trying to jump on the trends, everybody's trying
Hmm.
to get in and get out. And if you could just stand the test of time. Right, be
Yeah.
consistent, look at your data, keep learning, keep
Yeah.
learning about your audience.
Yeah, because being consistent doesn't mean that you're not an innovator. That has
Yeah,
nothing to do with it, which a lot of people think it's one or the other. You're consistent in your message and you're consistent in your experience, and you can continue innovating.
yeah,
Nothing to do with it.
yeah,
So, um, yeah, be there for the people that are looking for a solution that is, like you said, going to stand the test of time. And
yeah,
because I remember, like 4 years ago, it was all about the hacks in Facebook. Like, if you turn on and off your ad in the morning and then in the afternoon, then when it
yeah,
comes back, then it has all these super fast hacks. Just everybody should get away from those people, because that one is not going to work for everybody, and two, they're not giving you the quality traffic, the quality lead, and the quality clicks that you're looking for.
yeah,
And so, yeah, I remember that was a trend, quick hacks, and I've always disliked that.
yes,
So advertising, the same as you, advertising in a very crowded market. Whenever I had a Spring Hill Digital, that was that was challenging, but we stayed true to who we were and what we believed in, which was do your homework before you go into paid media. Get your systems in place
yeah,
and test. Always test, 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 test. Even if things are going well, continue testing.
yep, yep. And I would say on the other side, if you're somebody looking for a paid advertising expert and they don't ask you to do your homework, run the
Hmm.
other way.
And the other way.
Okay. If the first thing they're saying is, hey, give me access to all your accounts, we'll get these ads running in no time. Paul,
Hmm.
wait a minute, hold on. Are you going to look at the data? Oh, we'll look at it on the way. We just need to get these ads up and running. It's like, oh, what? Paul, timeout. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
yeah,
thank you, but no, thank you. So there is some self-checking on both sides. And I as you were talking, I did remember it wasn't consistency, it was longevity. That was driving me crazy. Dr. King said longevity has its place. But
Mhm,
I want Naira, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast and talking about paid advertising, especially
mhm,
on a shoestring budget. If you want to get the most out of your dollars, what I'm hearing is it mine the data. Listen to what people are saying. Don't start from a blank plate.
yeah,
Okay, blank slate, blank canvas, whatever the case is. Get some marketing in place. If you don't have the money to advertise, you definitely have time to create content that's engaging so you can at least figure out how people are responding. And
mhm,
once you figure out where your audience is, that's going to be the indicator of what channel to use to reach them. Some people, their audience is 100% on Instagram. It's not going to do much for them to be on Microsoft search or even maybe even
mhm,
Google, right? If that's where it is. It's just like whenever I would create a video on Instagram, I get all of these followers, but for some reason my ads over here aren't working. And the common sense mind would be like, well, just pay attention to what's working. But
mhm,
sometimes we're convinced before we should be convinced that
yeah,
a particular thing is the way to go because it worked for someone else. We're trying to fit the shoe that other people wore. So
mhm.
thank you for sharing that. Congratulations on your opportunity with the Trailblazers. If anybody wants to find out more about you, the work that you're currently doing or have
Mhm.
done, just want to get in touch, where should they go?
They should go to LinkedIn. I am
LinkedIn.
right
Okay.
there. There's not many Naira Perez in the world, but even less than work at the Portland Trailblazers. So
Yeah.
go to my LinkedIn page and
Okay, great.
yeah, just search for Naira Perez and you should find me really easy.
Okay, and we'll do you all a favor, listeners. We'll add her LinkedIn link to the show notes. So you just have to click right there and it'll take you right to LinkedIn, connect with Naira. Um, go to the games. Go to the games. If you're in Portland, you're probably going to be experiencing some results of her work. So you can see it live and in action again. Naira, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me. This was a lot of fun.
Yes, yes, yes. Great. I'll see you online.
Bye
All
bye.
right.